Is the Lunar Sorcerer overpowered? This new subclass from Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen has folks outright proclaiming that it's super busted and deserves to be banned at your tables. I'm here to say, you're wrong. This subclass isn't another round of so-called power creep. Hey everyone, this is Dungeoneer's Pack, let's dive into it. Lunar Embodiment is the feature that has people claiming power creep. It gives players an expanded spell list similar to the Clockwork Soul and Aberrant Mind subclasses, but flavored for 3 phases of the moon. Compared to the Tasha Sorcerer subclasses, the Lunar Sorcerer gets half a spell list more. You can switch between the 3 phases of the moon, but you have access to all these spells. The active moon phase only matters to determine which level 1 spell you can cast for free once per long rest. Lunar Embodiment is definitely strong and bloated, but it's not overpowered. Getting 1.5 spell list looks like a lot, and the free casting of a first level spell on top of it doesn't help, especially with one of those spells being shield, but nothing on this list will break your game. There are no outright I win abilities with this feature that remove any sense of chance that is found in other more recent sorcerer subclasses. This is just clunky design that could be streamlined to make the subclass more accessible. The real problem I have with this spell list is that Moonbeam isn't on it. Total flavor fail. Next is Moonfire, giving the subclass a bread and butter damage option that lets players cast Sacred Flame on 2 targets that are right next to each other. It's very straightforward and fun feature. I like that it modifies the cantrip to give the subclass a bit more identity, as there's always a tendency just to give a subclass proficiencies or extra spells with no additional flair. Moving on to Lunar Boons, each of your phases are associated with 2 schools of magic, and while you are in one of those phases, meta magic options cost a point cheaper if you're casting a spell from one of the associated spell schools. There are 2 ways to play this. You can take a wide selection of spells to make sure this feature is active for any situation, or you hyper-focus on 2 spell schools and exclusively use your meta magic points on them. The biggest point of concern for this feature is the potential to use a meta magic option for free, since the game is built around resource management. The only limiting factors for this feature are that you must be in a specific moon phase to cheapen the cost of only certain schools of magic, and the feature only has a limited number of uses equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. A majority of meta magic options will be free. Heightened Spell and Quicken Spell are the only options that won't be. Twin Spell, on the other hand, will be free for cantrips and first level spells. This is great for early level spells, but it does fall off for higher level spells, as you have to spend a number of sorcery points equal to the level of the spell, and this is still expensive for higher level spells at a reduced cost. Another thing to keep in mind is that spells that target a single creature generally are able to target more than one creature when upcasted. In addition to this, it's much more efficient to spend a single spell slot to do this for higher level spells or to upcast a spell, instead of spending multiple sorcery points to do something similar. Jumping over to Waxing and Waning, it gives us more control over what moon phase we have active by allowing us to switch between our moon phases for the cost of a sorcery point and a bonus action. The second part of the feature is a bit confusing, but it expands on our single free use of our first level spell associated with our active moon phase. Instead of only being able to cast one of those first level spells, we can now cast each of the first level spells once before a long rest, as long as we are in the moon phase associated with that spell. The feature is a bit wordy and confusing, but provides flexibility and a buff to Lunar Embodiment. Next is Lunar Empowerment, which will give our sorcerer a passive buff that changes depending on which moon phase we are currently using. Full moon will get the most use, as it will shed a small amount of light to see in the dark if you just so happen to be playing one of the very few race options without dark vision, but more importantly, it will allow you to gather information for your team. New Moon is a bit situational, but will come in clutch when the party is going on a stealth mission. Crescent is the only one that has any applicability in combat, but will only help against radiant or necrotic damage. Nothing here is really over the top, but Full Moon is a clear winner. There is no real incentive to use Crescent Moon unless you're in a campaign that will have enemies heavily using radiant or necrotic damage types. And finally, we have Lunar Phenomenon, which gives us a once per long rest spell-like option while we are in or when we choose our moon phase. Full Moon gives our allies advantage on their attacks, gives disadvantage to our enemies' attacks, and heals any ally. New Moon turns us invisible, damages our enemies, and slows them down. It's a solid area control ability. Crescent Moon lets us get ourselves and an ally out of danger and protects our teammate for a turn. You can use any of these abilities again after spending the initial free use by dropping 5 sorcery points. Overall, these are solid abilities, but nothing here is something worth repeatedly dumping 5 sorcery points into. You'll get more mileage out of using your points on your meta magic options instead of wasting them on an additional use. Overall, the Lunar Sorcerer subclass is strong, but not a game-breaking option that is so offensive that it needs to be banned like many in the D&D community are making it out to be. Lunar Embodiment and Lunar Boons appear to be strong features, but looking closer at them, they aren't disruptive to table play. Lunar Embodiment is bloated for its level. You get more spells compared to the Clockwork Soul and Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, but outside of Shield, nothing on that list is out of the ordinary. Shield is an exception because it's already a potent spell and a must-have for those playing in an optimized manner. Casting it for free once is strong, but keep in mind line, this sorcerer doesn't have the proficiencies to be in melee combat, so in most cases, it will pop up if they are getting shot with arrows or a single target spell. It potentially lacks the consistency that many other character builds do have. The biggest fail for me is the lack of Moonbeam on the spell list. It's nowhere to be found. The spell has moon in the name. It's right there. It should have been on the list. Lunar Boons allowing you to use meta magic options for free is jarring, but Waxing and Waning allowing you to switch between forms for a sorcery point and a bonus action balances this out. In many cases, it's much more efficient use of your time, action economy, sorcery points, or spell points to not try to maximize using Lunar Boons. Despite Lunar Embodiment and Lunar Boons being strong, Lunar Sorcery isn't the most powerful sorcerer subclass. The Clockwork Soul Sorcerer is still the strongest subclass, as it can outright remove any sense of chance from the game. But some of you still don't care. You think it's overpowered and think Wizards is intentionally causing power creep. Power creep does not exist in a cooperative game. In my opinion, what's happening is that Wizards has obviously changed its design philosophy. The introduction of new player options corresponds with direct complaints the player base has had regarding the game. In the case of the Sorcerer, we're getting player options that have more spells and utility. Now folks are acting like this is too much. And of course, it's going to appear stronger than previous options. They have never been updated with this new design approach, but you know that updated edition is around the corner. Another thing that is making this appear as an increase in power is Wizards of the Coast has dropped the ball in creating DM specific tools and material to help DMs develop the skills needed to challenge their players and arbitrate the rules. When it comes down to it, the power creep discussion just further promotes adversarial gameplay between players and DMs, and that mindset needs to go the way of the dodo.